Wisconsin's a very family-friendly state, and I tried to make all the items memories that you could share with family and friends and have a good time doing.
Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of Wisconsin's Outdoor Explorer Podcast. I am your host, Jason. Now that the new year is here, most people like to make resolutions and goals for the upcoming year. And one thing that we all probably have is our bucket list. You know, a list of activities, places, and things that we'd all like to try in our lifetime. I know I've got my list of things that I'd like to do. I would like to visit Alaska someday. I'd like to get to Hawaii, see those beautiful states. I'd like to fly in a hot air balloon at least once and, get to the ice caves if those ever happen again, which I don't think they're happening this year. And there's a lot of things that I'd like to do in this state that are on my bucket list. But with so many great things to do in our state, it's sometimes hard to figure out where to start. And that's where this week's podcast comes in. This week, I talked with Kelly Jo Stull, author of The Wisconsin Bucket List. Now, this is a really fun book. She's compiled a bucket list of things to see and do in our state that every Wisconsinite should have on their own bucket list. Now, Kelly was born and raised in Wisconsin and later moved to Kentucky, where she lives now. But Wisconsin is always calling to her, and that's where the inspiration of her book came from. She still gets back to Wisconsin to visit family whenever she can, and she's still crossing items off her bucket list that she's compiled. And it was really a fun interview to talk to her about some of the things that are on the list and how she came up with the list and all the great ideas there are for us Wisconsinites and people who are visiting. If somebody's looking to visit the state, this is a great book to have to get you started on what it's like to be a true Wisconsinite. Now, she still gets back to Wisconsin, like I said, to visit family whenever she can. So I guess the saying is true. You can take the girl out of Wisconsin, but you can't take Wisconsin out of the girl. So let's get right into the interview with Kelly Jo Stull, the author of The Wisconsin Bucket List. Kelly Jo, thank you for joining me on the podcast, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So Kelly, what's your earliest memory of being outdoors?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. Well, I think my fondest memories are probably growing up around the lake in Wisconsin. It's where I learned to swim. It's where I learned to water ski, went fishing, caught sunfish. But I think probably my very first memory was picking blackberries or raspberries, and my mom was looking for me and couldn't find me, and I was across the street in the sun eating my mouthful of berries.
That's a good memory. I'm sure it was for you. Your mom was probably not such a great one. Well, that's fun. Well, I want to say I really enjoyed your book, and I think it really epitomizes what Wisconsin is all about. And my first question about your bucket list is, what makes a good bucket list item?
Well, I think for people, that's a really personal question, what makes a good bucket list item. For the book, what I tried to do was make items that would reflect the state and reflect the culture of the state, reflect the people, and what it's all about, and what they should experience maybe, or what I experienced and had fond memories of. I wanted to include things like sports and museums and food and outdoor destinations, just things that represented the culture and maybe evoked a sense of wonder and happiness and thoughtfulness and good memories.
What inspired you to come up with the bucket list?
Well, I live in Kentucky now. I grew up in Wisconsin. All my family's back in Wisconsin. I go up several times a year to visit them. I have 3 daughters and my husband, and my daughters were, experiencing all the great things Kentucky has to offer. But I wanted them to know what my childhood was like, where my parents took me, all the things that we could do and see when we went back to visit Grandma and Grandpa and all their cousins. And that's one of the things that really inspired me, is just wanting my kids to learn about the state and my passion for it. Another thing that inspired me to write the bucket list book is just my own family up in Wisconsin. My mom, my dad, my 3 older sisters, my brother, the great experiences we had going out to state parks on the weekend, going to visit Lambeau Field, going to the different brewery tours, cheese factory tours, cranberry marshes, just all those things we did together. I wanted to pay honor to my mom and dad, basically, for instilling all that time and really education to me about the state without me even knowing it, because I was having such a great time.
Did they give you some ideas to put into the book, or was this all just from your memory?
Partially I drew on my own memory, but then, of course, I talked to my family, I talked to friends. The more thought that I put into it, I called several businesses, called museums, spoke to public librarians. They're a great resource. And really, people gave me some great ideas, some great feedback. The Wisconsin Department of Tourism has loads of ideas, and they're wonderful. I got a list that was overwhelming, to be honest with you. I could probably write another book. But what I wanted to do was narrow down the list to what I thought was a fair representation of the state. And it's funny, with all the people that I talked to, none of them said this should definitely be in the book. They just offered their ideas, but everybody agreed that the number one thing in the book should be Lambeau Field and the Green Bay Packers. Otherwise, the book is in no chronological order, but everybody agreed that you need to go to Lambeau Field. So that is number one on the list, even though the Packers kind of let us down last game.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, that's it happens, I guess. But yeah, and I think that you did hit that on the head with that number one. I think when people think of Wisconsin, they think of our Packers. They just that's who we are. We live and die with the Packers here.
I've heard sports announcers even say, of stadiums around the United States, Lambeau Field is definitely a bucket list stadium.
Yes, yeah. Oh, just the history alone, I think, adds to that whole mystique of Lambeau, and even if you don't get to see a game there, just to go visit Lambeau and the Hall of Fame and all that is just something special, honestly.
Oh yeah, and take a tour. Take the extended tour if you have the time to do it. It's a wonderful experience.
You mentioned with all these ideas coming in, how do you whittle that down to 100?
Yeah, that was hard. I wanted to be fair to the state. I wanted to represent the fun of the state, the great outdoors, all the beauty we have in Wisconsin, the history we have. I wanted to include the museums, our agriculture, the dairy state, and the cranberries and the beautiful lakes and just so many wonderful things to do. And you could go to the same state park in winter and do it again in summer, and it's like a whole different experience just because of the season. So to whittle it down, like I said, I could probably write another book because there's so many wonderful things to do in the state of Wisconsin. But I wanted just kind of to spread the bucket list items around the state so that everybody could experience each part of the state and represent the fun and excitement of the state.
Well, and that was one of the things I liked about your book as well, is at the very end, you left space there so we could add on our own bucket list items.
Oh, yeah. I think for every one destination that I went to, I could have probably written 5 more to go along with it. Great restaurants that we have, or statues of the largest loon or the largest penny, just silly things like that, but just fun things that are great side attractions to have your photo taken at with the family.
And I'm glad you said that about the state parks, because that's one thing that I've always said too, that, you might have a favorite state park that you like to visit in the summertime, but it changes as the season changes. So it's always okay to go back to those same places throughout the year because they're changing all the time. And I think that's one of the great things about this state is how the seasons change and how it changes your outlook basically on things too.
It really does. I think a great example I experienced with that is on the Apostle Island National Shoreline. I went kayaking with my sister and a professional group there near Bayfield, and they took us through the sea caves, a guided tour, and that was in July, and it was just gorgeous. Now, my sister's a little claustrophobic, so it took a little courage on her part because some of those caves are kind of narrow and small, but there were some huge crevices as well. But I remember going back to that same spot about 6-7 months later in February, and that year the sea caves had turned into the ice caves because they had opened up into the ice caves, and I got back to that very same cave, and there it was, froze over, and I had been there in July in a kayak.
Yeah.
And it was just a whole new scenery, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, and I know that's one of the things on my bucket list is to see the ice caves, and after that year, I don't think they've been open since. So you hit it at the perfect time when you did get to go. So I noticed through your list there is a lot of outdoor activities. In fact, the majority on your list is outdoor activities, and I wanted to ask you why you think Wisconsin is such an easy place to enjoy the outdoors.
That's a really good question. I think in the summertime we have the lakes that are open and available for boating, canoeing, kayaking, tubing, and goodness knows that we're all ready for summer by the time it rolls around, and we're ready to get out and enjoy some sunshine. And a lot of people love to go fishing, but that doesn't stop. There's so many opportunities even when those lakes freeze over. I know my brother lives on one side of the lake and my parents live on the other side, and he'll put on his snowshoes in the winter and he'll snowshoe across the lake. He's also been a avid ice fisherman. So that's another thing that our state offers. One of the things on the bucket list that I have is snowshoeing Timms Hill, and that is actually the highest point in the state. And when I was in Kentucky, I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to snowshoe up the highest elevation in Wisconsin? And I don't have any snow to train in down here. So I train by getting on the stair stepper and the treadmill in the gym, not with snowshoes, but just by practicing here. And that was more than enough to get up to the top of Timms Hill. I think it was New Year's Day. My friend and I went and climbed up the tower to there and got a beautiful view of the lake and the area in Price County. There's such diversity in the state, too. You've got where the glaciers have gone through, and then you've got the rolling hills over in the Arta Elroy area. You've got the bluffs and La Crosse. It's just so much natural wonder to take in. It's a huge state, and it's full of great opportunities to explore.
When I think about Wisconsin and everything to see, there's times where I think, why do people go off on these long vacations when there's so much here that you can see that you probably would never get to it in your lifetime just because there's so much here. So I completely agree. There's a lot of great things here that we can check off our list. So now, speaking of checking off your list, how many of the items have you done on this bucket list?
I've done about 80 last I counted. So I still have about 20 more to go, and hope to get there someday.
That's really impressive, 80. I think I was around the 40 mark when I checked it. So I got a little bit ways to go to catch up with you. So,
well, I think that it certainly gave me. I read the book to do some of the destination.
Was there anything on the list that you were a little bit reluctant to try? But then, after you did it, you were like, why didn't I do this earlier? Or why did I wait so long to do this?
Yeah, well, I can think of a couple things right off the top of my head. Number one would probably be the Elroy Sparta Trail. When I lived in Wisconsin, I thought, that would always be kind of cool to do because I ride bike, and it's, you go through 3 train tunnels in the Elroy Sparta area, and it's about 32 miles long. I thought, oh, wow, that would be a cool thing to do. And I never did it when I lived in the state. And then when I moved away, I thought, I am going to do that. And the nice thing is at the Kendall Depot, they have bikes for rent there, so you don't have to tote yours along. You can actually rent them there. And I took my kids and went, and they had a great time. We didn't do the whole trail with the kids. That was too much for them, but we did get through one of the tunnels, and they took lots of pictures, and they really enjoyed it. Of course, when you go through the tunnels, you have to dismount your bike and have a flashlight to walk your bike through. Otherwise, it would be too dangerous because it gets pretty dark in there. And then I enjoyed it so much, I took my brother and my brother-in-law back, and we did the whole trail together, and that was a lot of fun and a really special memory that I made with them. Then, lo and behold, I find out my brother and my brother-in-law are doing it every year without me. So I started something there. But a lot of these things in the bucket list, I think I tried to make, Wisconsin is a very family-friendly state, and I tried to make all the items, memories that you could share with family and friends and have a good time doing.
So what are some tips that you have for somebody who wants to try to get everything off this list?
Oh, goodness. Well, the good thing is it's not written in any certain order. I will say some of the festivals in the book only happen once a year, so you might have to do a little homework and figure out, well, when can I do that? Because that only happens once a year. Like, church festivals in particular. I'm thinking of St. Bronislavia's in Plover, but any church festival. And I think there's an ice fishing tournament on Lake Winnebago in there. You can only ice fish certain times of year.
Yep.
So you might want to plan out your adventures. Make sure that if you need to have any sort of license, like on the Elroy Sparta Trail, you have to get a day pass from the DNR, Wisconsin DNR, because they do maintain the trails. Just make sure that if you go to do an activity like kayaking, the sea caves, I would highly recommend that you do that with an experienced outfit that can guide you on Lake Superior. Lake Superior is the largest lake in the world, and it's nothing to take lightly, and the weather can change out there quickly, so you want to be with somebody that knows what they're doing. Yeah.
Do you know anybody who's completed your list?
I don't know of anybody. Do you?
No. Well, and that's
I don't know of anybody, but I'd love to hear if anybody has. That'd be pretty cool.
Well, and I think that's what makes that list fun is there's that little bit of almost a little bit of a challenge to see how many you can get done and if you can complete the list. And I think you made a valid point about, checking the seasons and things, but that's another great thing about the book is there's so many things that happen all year long that you keep busy basically for a full year if you really wanted to attempt to get a lot of things crossed off.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the great things about Wisconsin. I think the snow really doesn't slow us down. The cold doesn't really slow us down. If you're looking for a festival, there's probably one going on somewhere in the state that weekend. I mean, we're always having a good time.
Yep.
We like a good excuse for a party.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I love about Wisconsinites is we're resilient. You know what? There's snow on the ground. We'll find something to have fun in doing it. And yeah, you're exactly right. We do not stop because it's cold out. We keep going and we find something to find the bright side of everything up here. Is there something that you would like to have added now that you didn't put in the book?
One of the things for sure I did not put in the book, and I would add, like you said, are the ice caves. I was really fortunate to do that the year I was able to. I think that's a great bucket list item for Wisconsin. People come all around the world to see those ice caves when they do open, and that's something that doesn't happen every year.
No. What's the one thing that you would tell somebody who's visiting Wisconsin for the first time that they should or need to do?
Well, I've been in this position where I know people that are going to Wisconsin. Like, they'll say, I'm going to Milwaukee. What should I do? I'm like, well, you definitely have to go to a brewery. Go visit, Lakeshore Brewery, Miller Brewery. Go see a brewery. If you're going to be there on a Friday night, go have a Friday night fish fry. Try the cheese curds, have the beer. Go to the Milwaukee Art Museum if you can. Wow, what a fantastic building that is. I think it was named in Forbes' top 50 archaeological beautiful builds in the world.
Okay. It's a beautiful building.
It's amazing, and to see the wing spread open and close is pretty spectacular as well. But a lot of times I do give recommendations to friends that are coming in. Devil's Lake State Park is a great destination as well it depends what time of the year it is, but I personally love the hike up to Devil's Doorway, from down on the beach up to Devil's Doorway, up the rock staircase. It's exhausting. It's a short hike. It's strenuous, though, and I love it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we were there this summer, and it was a fun hike for us. But yeah, it's one of our favorite parks there too, Devil's Lake.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Wisconsin all in one park. I always like to say with that one, you got a nice lake, you've got the rock formations. It's just you've got woods all around you. It's Wisconsin in one state park.
It's beautiful.
So, what's your favorite thing from the list?
So, my number one experience on the list is dog sledding. I went dog sledding, Wolfsong Adventures in Mushing, up near Bayfield, near Cornucopia. If you go to Cornucopia, I found out the hard way you went too far. So, that would have to be, I'm a dog lover. Experiencing the snow in northern Wisconsin with the dogs was amazing. I got there. They instruct you on how to harness the dogs. And so you harness your own team, you harness your sled. They give you instructions on how to drive the sled. Then you're off and mushing with a group of people. And it doesn't take long before you realize you're part of a team with these dogs. They may be doing some of the work, but you need to tell them where they need to go, and they know where to go, but you basically need to steer the sled and slow it down when it needs to be slowed down. The guy in front of me didn't slow down like he should have around the curve, and the sled tipped over, and the dogs kept going. No. My dog passed that dog's sled, and I think the dogs were kind of laughing along the way. But, he got back on. He was all right. But, I learned, too, when you're going uphill, not to just stand on the sled, on the skis. You got to get off and help the dogs push up the hill. And I learned that the hard way the first time. I realized why they weren't getting up the hill, because I wasn't doing my part as the team. But then after a little while, I got the hang of it, and we were zooming through the white poplar woods at sunset, and it was an incredible journey, and it's something I'll never forget.
Yeah, that sounds like a very incredible experience in itself. This book, I gotta say, is really handy to have. I think, you can keep it in your backpack, you can keep it in your car, and you can check things off as you're doing it. Tell everybody out there how to get one of your books.
2 places I can tell you to get it for sure is Syndic Grocery Store in Milwaukee. They have several grocery stores in the Milwaukee area. It's near the floral section and the home decor section. I think they keep the book there. In Rudolph at the Wisconsin Dairy State Cheese Company, they have the book there. In Rudolph, Wisconsin, they have over 100 varieties of cheeses to select. It's pretty awesome. You can never go out there and come out empty-handed. They have wonderful cheese curds, too. They make them fresh at the factory, and you can actually see them being made, so that's kind of cool. When they're still warm in the bag, that's when you know they're going to squeak in your teeth. Yankee Bookstore in Wausau has it. The Fireside Theater Group has it. Cave of the Mounds Gift Store has it. And Amazon carries it. And there's a few other select gift stores around the state that also carry it.
And if somebody wants to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
They can contact me through my website, www.bookthewisconsinbucketlist.com. You can email me there.
Well, Kelly, it's a great book. In my opinion, it's something that every Wisconsinite should have on their bookshelf so that they can cross these items off their list. And I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast and talking to us about your book.
Thank you. I had a great time.
I want to thank Kelly for taking the time to do the podcast. I really enjoyed her book, and I can say that I've got a little ways to go before I can cross everything off her list. Now, if you have the book and you've accomplished all of it, reach out to her. She would really like to hear of somebody who has completed this list. If you don't have the book, order it. It's a really fun bucket list, and what I think is fun about it is finding the times to cross something off the list and moving to that next item. Like I said in the interview, she lays it out so that there's a lot of things happening throughout the year that you can do. And I think that's part of the fun of the actual bucket list, is just finding that thing, crossing it off, and having that little bit of a proud moment to say that you got that off your list, and now you can look forward to the next thing. And it really epitomizes what Wisconsin is all about. If you haven't checked out the book, I'll have a link in the show notes on where you can get it. I'll also link to her website, and you can also follow her on Twitter and on Facebook. The Wisconsin Bucket List is a great way to really experience a little bit of everything Wisconsin has to offer. I know I've used it to plan a few of my outings, and I'm going to use it to plan a few more. And, it can help you decide your next adventure as you head out to be one of Wisconsin's outdoor explorers. Thanks again for joining me. I'm your host, Jason, and I'll talk to you again next week. Thanks for listening to the Wisconsin's Outdoor Explorer podcast. For more great information about being an outdoor explorer, visit our website at wisconsinsoutdoorexplorer.com. Be sure to check out the blog page and follow us on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.